Welcome to the Art Den, where we meet all kinds of artists who make all kinds of art. We gain an insight into their lives and find out what inspires them. I'm Judy, and with me in the studio today is Huddersfield-based freelance photographer and videographer, Laura Mateescu. Originally from Romania, Laura moved to Huddersfield in 2011. At 18, she published several pieces of creative writing in Romania. She picked up photography 1 year later when her mother gave her a camera as a gift. Laura has held multiple exhibitions in both the UK and Romania. She recently submitted her PhD through socially engaged photography with a community of Romanians living in the UK about their experiences of Brexit. Join us as we delve into Laura's experiences and discover the stories behind her work. Hi Laura, thank you for joining us today.
Hi Judy, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Great stuff. Shall we go on to the questions?
Sure.
Excellent, great. Thank you. So, could you tell us about your creative journey and what led you to take up photography?
So, as you mentioned in that wonderful introduction about me, my mom gifted me a DSLR camera when I was 19. I was really getting into photography, was using one of those like really small handheld cameras and was playing around with them, and I thought, you know, I kind of want to be like a more serious photographer. So when she did that for me, it completely, you know, changed the way I was looking at photography. I think at the time it was mostly about play and discovery and just getting used to using the camera. I had absolutely no knowledge of all the tech and all the, you know, bits and bobs behind what it takes to make images. So there was a time where my friends were, you know, joking in our group that because I was always with the camera after me, it was first you see the lens, then you see the camera, and then you see Laura. So I think that kind of progressed naturally my interest and almost like dedication to photography. But it wasn't until 2011 when I moved to the UK and started the BA in photography that I think I became a lot more aware about, you know, the kind of power that goes in photography and the question about representation and how to use it to create visual stories and go more in the complexity of you know, what it is we're photographing and for what reason we're photographing.
Oh yeah, very interesting. Yeah. What subjects do you like to photograph and where do you find your inspiration?
I think there are a few different styles of photography I keep reverting to. So portraiture has always been something that I've been really passionate about because it's about people and stories and kind of creating those interactions through photography. Conceptual photography became something that I started working with when I was doing my BA, and that became about narrative, about series of images, about symbolism and you know, constructing these more serious visual narratives about well, culture and identity, really.
Yeah.
Then visual autoethnography became something, well, it was something that I always did. I just don't think I've ever phrased it as visual autoethnography. It was with the PhD that, you know, this kind of became part of my language, but it's mostly a documentation of daily life, the small little things that happen in my life and around me. And with the PhD as well, I started working with still life photography, which was something that I had never really done before. And I think that's quite interesting because it was happening at the time of the pandemic when, you know, there was a lot of chaos around us. And it was almost in response to that, a way of like slowing down and kind of building this very still kind of discourse and reality.
Yeah, really interesting actually. And it would give you something to really focus on that you, I mean, I was very creative during the pandemic, you know, I did a lot of painting.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, because you know you really
you
want
need
to
that.
do,
You need that creative kind of outlet, particularly when the world around us is going crazy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's brilliant. So, thinking about visual art in its widest sense, could you tell us about some of the artistic styles that have influenced you?
some of the artistic styles. Well, as I mentioned previously, portraiture or portrait photography has always been a big thing for me. Documentary photography, and more recently studio-based still life photography.
Right.
And I know they're quite different from each other, but I think that's in a sense, maybe the beauty of photography, because you don't necessarily have to stay true to one style. You can, be flexible around it and use it however it's useful to you to kind of create the story and the context that you want to.
Yeah, right. And you actually like to, you enjoy making things to photograph, don't you?
I do.
You enjoy doing like an installation, really, and like making a still life and, turning something into something and then photographing it. So it's all the way through.
Yeah, it's kind of like building it from nothing to something.
Yeah, fabulous. Yeah, that's really cool. So you recently completed an investigation into experiences of Brexit as your PhD project, in which you explored themes of identity, belonging and power dynamics. Could you tell us about that project, the collaboration that involved and the exhibitions and the photo books that resulted from it?
Sure. So I had worked in participatory context before with Romanian communities. The first big project that I did around that was actually my MA project, which was looking at renegotiating the Romanian stereotypes. And my participants were members of, Romanian communities living in the UK, local ones. And then the PhD kind of felt like a natural progression of that. We were obviously going through Brexit, the pandemic complicated everything. There was a lot of national discourse going around, vilification of immigration. So then it kind of felt natural to work in this very collaborative sense with the Romanian community to bring to surface these narratives that almost countered what was going on in the press at the time. So this project was the first socially engaged photographic project that I did. And just to give a little bit of context, working in this way means that, it's very democratic. You kind of establish aims and objectives with the people that you're working with, the collaborators. Everything is negotiated from start to finish. There were 4 main phases in the project. So the first one was the collaboration per se, but it included co-curation of the images, co-production of an exhibition, and co-authorship of a photo book.
Brilliant.
And it was absolutely amazing. I learned so much from each and one of them. And it was this truly open way of exchanging skills and lived experience to grow this project. Without the collaborators, I absolutely would not have the project I have at the moment. And it feels even wrong to say that I have the project because it's ours.
Yeah, for sure. Were these people who collaborated with you, were they all photographers?
No, not at all. I mean, we're all coming from different kind of backgrounds. I was the only one with a sort of an education in photography, if you can say that. So altogether we were 5 collaborators. One of us is an architect, another one of us works in tax, another one in IT, and another one in software.
Oh, wow.
So a very kind of like a varied pool of people, let's say.
Oh, fabulous. So how did they manage to, produce those amazing photos? I have actually seen the exhibitions. How did they manage to take those photographs then, with that? So we worked together for 10 months. It was the pandemic, so we worked online. Teams was our best friend at the time. But we did have workshops where, as I mentioned, we had these skill exchanges where I'm going to say taught them photography, but I don't know if that's necessarily the best term for it. I shared my knowledge of photography. And we had loads of different kind of photographic activities happening to kind of like put in practice the things that we were discussing, techniques, processes, framing and composition, conceptual understanding, the way that, we communicate stories visually, the cues and symbolism behind it. It goes really deep into the whole theory of representation and photography. But I think the main part of it is that we listen to each other. We
co-curated at the same time. So then we had group discussions of the images that were being produced, talked about how they communicate our identities or the sort of experiences that we were thinking to kind of put forward as part of that. So yeah, it was really this very open kind of like back and forth and critical discussions of what we were producing as we were producing.
Sounds brilliant. Yeah, it was really fascinating.
Oh, it was brilliant.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So, when and where do you work, and how easy is it for you to stop once you started?
So my practice, I think, diverges and converges with the kind of imagery I did for the PhD project, in the sense that I do a lot of like events photography as well. I do a lot of portraiture. I photograph theater plays, which is all happening in the outside world. Mm-hmm. And I get lost in it. I don't see myself doing anything else. But then when it comes to studio-based work and the kind of still life imagery that I did for the PhD, I mostly worked in my home. It's not really a photography studio, but I have all the equipment that I need, and I make do with the things that I find around the house to kind of improvise reflectors of, or whatever else I might need.
Yeah.
It's really funny you should ask this, because when I was creating one of the images for the PhD, it took me, I think, about 6 hours to develop it. And my husband did help me for a little while to hold the reflectors, but I could see that I was losing him, so I had to carry on without him.
6 hours?
6 hours.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it's really funny, if you look through all the images, there's just like one tiny difference between, frames, a bit more of a highlight here or more shadow there.
Yeah.
I mean, he was saying that he cannot see, the difference between them. I'm like, come on, it's right there.
Yeah, it's only you can see it, isn't it?
Yeah,
it has to be just spot on right for you. Yeah.
And I am very critical with the work that I do. It's got to be just right. And it's never just right, but there comes a point where I have to, let it breathe without me.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Yeah, thank you, Laura. Yeah. So could you tell us a bit about one or two of your favourite photographs, either from your exhibition or from one of your books?
Sure. So I'm going to refer again to the still life practice.
Yeah.
One of my favorite images from there is an image that I created by wrapping a Romanian scarf in the shape of a head. Mm-hmm. And around the neck area, there's a belt that kind of constricts it.
Right.
Everything is shot in this kind of moody atmosphere, black background, which is highly symbolic of Brexit. But I think that image is quite important to me, because in the whole experience of Brexit, I felt like I didn't really have a voice. Mm-hmm. There was a constriction of my voice and my identity. And I think that was my way of kind of letting photography lead me towards understanding what exactly complicates my whole kind of view of where I stand in the whole Brexit polemic. So yes, that image has a lot going on. There's a lot of metaphors and a lot of small little details that link back to my Romanian identity or to discourses from the media at the time. I used peacock feathers a lot in my still life practice. This is something that I think was influenced by my upbringing. When I was really young, my grandmother had a vase full of peacock feathers in the living room on top of a mini bar situation. But it was the first thing that you would see when you walked in the living room, and it kind of felt like I had pairs of eyes watching over me all the time. I had to behave. So then I introduced the peacock feathers in the project as this kind of like surveillance element. There's someone there looking and seeing what's going on, even if everything is happening in this very kind of dark, twisty atmosphere.
Yeah. So a subtle symbolism going on in there. Yeah. Fabulous. So that was one of them, and was there another of your favourite, other favourite photos?
Yes.
Another one that you could tell us about?
So the second image is called Not Another Cakeist Treaty. And it links to what Boris Johnson said about the Brexit negotiations and the very productive outcome for the UK from these negotiations. And he referred to it as a cakeist treaty, like having your cake and eating it. Mm-hmm. And then the image is kind of like an ironic interpretation of that. Again, I'm using this very intense black background. And in the image, we have a piece of cake on a plate, but it's filled with nails. And, in terms of the actual social destabilization that went around with Brexit and, the shortcomings of the negotiations, it really felt like you couldn't just leave that statement living there without kind of visually intervening on what was going on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So the nails are like symbolizing, like, okay, so if you say it's a cakeist treaty, that's what your cake is.
Yeah. It's like having your cake and eating it. Great, but what does that cake look like?
It don't look definitely nice.
Not as appetizing as you think.
Great, thank you very much for describing those photographs.
Thank you.
Great. So what are your plans now that you've completed your PhD studies?
I am waiting for a Viva date, so my examination will happen at some point soon. This is going to be the final step in the PhD, where I will have to defend the project in front of an external commission. So wish me luck.
Right, yes, good luck with that, absolutely. Yeah.
But apart from that, I am still working in photography. I have a couple of projects lined up that are in a very kind of initial phase, so I don't want to divulge too much about that, but one of them is in collaboration with a local historian. About Huddersfield's heritage. And then the other one is going to be initially a pilot project. Let's see if it works. Yeah. Because it will want to include a socially engaged element, a performative element, video work as well, and photography.
Wow, that sounds a bit ambitious.
It is, so that's why let's see if it works before I start talking about it. But it will look again at this context of culture, identity, representation, and senses of belonging in a local context.
Oh, it'd be really interesting, because obviously there are a lot of people in our region who originally come from another place.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. We have a lot of richness, diversity here. So I imagine that sounds like a really good project.
This is exactly the whole idea behind it, bringing to surface these absolutely fantastic stories about people's lives, which you might, hear personally in like day-to-day conversations, but they should be recorded somehow. There should be an archive of this.
Yeah, fabulous. Yeah, thank you, Laura. That's great. And so, in terms of your personal identity, how important for you is being a photographer?
How important it is for me? I think I have a bit of a tense relationship with photography in this sense, because in some ways I feel like I hide behind it, but at the same time I feel like I put it forward as well. It's who I am and it's what I do. And sometimes I fall out with photography and I don't do photography for a while, but there's always a moment where I come back to it.
Yes, brilliant. Yeah, that's great. So you've kind of expressed a lot of this, but this is for like a summing up, which is always very difficult, because something that you really love, there are lots of reasons for doing it, why you're doing it, like this. So to sum it up, a bit of a challenge to see how you do. So how would you sum up your reason for creating art? Why do you take photographs?
I think photography for me is very much linked to my identity, and I think quite tightly linked to my experience of migration. So then it helps me to kind of create these visual narratives in a way that I'm not able to verbalize with any other language. and it happened, you know, throughout all the projects that I did around this idea of culture and identity. It led me towards where I needed to be. In a way, it's like it's opening doors, and it's making me aware of, experiences and feelings that I wouldn't necessarily want to kind of face that in a reflective way sometimes, because it's difficult to kind of like put your finger on things that might not be going great or whatever. So yeah, it was always a segue.
Yeah.
For me in that sense. But don't get me wrong, I mean, I'm using photography to also celebrate happy moments, and it's not just about, you know, complications and tragedies and, you know, things that it's hard for us to kind of like talk about. On the contrary, it's a wonderful way to record life.
Yeah, fabulous. That's lovely, Laura. Thank you. That's really great. So, thanks for joining us today. It's been great talking to you. Wish you all the best for the future. You know, with Viva, yeah, and so yeah, like the fingers crossed that goes really well, and yeah, so great. And to you, the audience, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to Kirklees Local TV on YouTube to get our latest videos first, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now. Should we get a cup of tea?
Absolutely, let's do it.